Okay, so we just wrapped up the traditional data sets, which covered passive DNS, who is open source intelligence, hashes, projects, subdomains, and DNS. It's a lot of information. And you'd think that that would be absolutely all we need in order to conduct investigations and really break open actor infrastructure and find the bad guys.
But the threat actors know how we gather the data, how those sets work, and they try to evolve. So our data sets have to evolve. Absolutely.
So what we've noticed is that attackers, especially the more sophisticated ones, are finding ways around specific data sets. Now, they're not always getting past all of the data sets. Maybe it's just one or two. But we are noticing that they're taking note of how we detect them. And so as a result, we've had to increase the number of signals that we're collecting. And that's where our virtual user technology and internet scanning really comes into play here in introducing new data sets.
So can you tell me how the virtual crawlers work?
Yeah, so we mentioned this before, but the virtual users are kind of like what our parents might be when browsing the internet, or even one of our friends who's not necessarily security savvy. They function as a virtual user in the sense that they can perform queries in search engines. They can recursively go through those results by clicking around. They can interact with the page, scroll, click on content. And then we mentioned before that we have hundreds of egress points that we can proxy the traffic through, and the ability to emulate or mimic specific platform features that we may want to use just to get extra targeting or make ourselves appear like a victim. And what's particularly interesting is that not only can the crawlers do all of this work, but they're powered by some pretty complex policies in the back end of RiskIQ's portal. And so we can do a lot of different ways of controlling these policies and how our crawlers function. And then last, but I've mentioned this before, is that we're really working with a headless browser here that's been instrumented. And so all that really means is that much like when you browse the internet and you're viewing web pages, all of that information that's both available to you visually and then everything that's happening behind the scenes, all of that information is collected and stored in RiskIQ servers.
So if the threat actor is trying to find people going out and crawling, they don't detect us because we act like a real user would.
Yeah, we're not going to necessarily identify ourselves as RiskIQ crawling service, please let us in. We go through a pretty complex process to emulate the operating system that's being used. In some cases where we're going after and we're scanning for particular mobile applications, we'll actually egress through mobile networks that are actually connected to a real SIM and a network that we think is going to be best targeted for what it is that we're searching for. And so one of the questions that we often get asked by customers is, well, I can just go build a crawler myself. Why do I have to use the virtual user technology? Well, I think you hit on that a little bit around how it is that we're identifying ourselves or how we're not identifying ourselves. I think that from a perspective of a security company or someone who's trying to identify attacks, having the ability to make yourself look like any specific technology platform or come from a specific location and go the extra steps of scrolling on a web page and clicking around a bit really does emulate the behavior of a user as opposed to what might be perceived as a security researcher.
But even the scale at which we can go out there and collect this information, a company, they wouldn't be able to do this. So.
Yeah, it would certainly be pretty difficult. Doing billions of HTTP requests a day and then not only processing that information but also storing it in a way that we can search for it is certainly a challenge. And so when we ask about, especially when we're talking to customers about some of the capabilities that the virtual user technology provides, one of the great benefits is for cases where the attacker has become sophisticated enough that maybe their payloads are only being delivered to a certain region. So maybe the company has a global presence and maybe their German website was compromised and it is now delivering malware that is targeting just the German users. Well, if their United States office, where maybe the security team is located or the primary security team is located, is going and exploring that, if they're accessing that from a United States IP address or network, chances are high if the attacker has put in geofencing on their attack, they're not going to see anything malicious. They're going to see a clean page and they can simply say that that was a false positive. They don't understand what happened. But by having this virtual user technology, we're able to not only crawl our customers' infrastructure, but we're able to crawl all different parts of the internet in a very unique way that allows us to often get attacks delivered to us more often than not.
But even like when some of the like black TDS, some of the hackers that will check out the machine before it sends it to the malware, our headless browsers can mimic those types of things, so it gets those things will play and we'll see them.
Yeah, so I mean, we go beyond just country and language pack. You know, in some cases, we know that malware is sophisticated enough that it'll detect the presence of a specific cookie being deployed before the malware will be served. And our crawlers are able to kind of retain those sessions, have the cookie stored, replay that information. They're really powerful. So it's not just a browser that goes off and crawls things. It really is like a virtual user.